edited version of what they had to say. Shlomo Ben Ami is both an insider and a scholar. As foreign minister under Ehud Barak, he was a key participant in years of Israel-Palestinian peace talks, including the Camp David and Taba talks in 2000 and 2001. An Oxford-trained historian, his new book is Scars of War, Wounds of Peace, the Israeli-Arab Tragedy. President Bill Clinton says, quote, Shlomo Ben Ami worked tirelessly and courageously for peace. His account of what he did and failed to do and where we go from here should be read by everyone who wants a just and lasting resolution. We're also joined by Norman Finkelstein. He's a professor of political science at DePaul University in Chicago. His latest book is Beyond Chutzpah, on the misuse of anti-Semitism and the abuse of history. Avi Schleim, Israeli scholar at Oxford University, calls Beyond Chutzpah brilliantly illuminating on display are all the sterling qualities for which Finkelstein has become famous. We tried to cover as much ground as we could, from the origins of the conflict to the Oslo peace process to the present. I began by asking the foreign minister of Israel, Shlomo Ben Ami, about the founding of Israel in 1948.
In 1948, what was born was a state, but also a regional superpower in many ways. We have prevailed over the invading Arab armies and the local population, which was practically evicted from Palestine, from the state of Israel, from what became the state of Israel, and this is how the refugee problem was born. Interestingly, the Arabs in 1948 lost a war that was, as far as they were concerned, lost already in 1936, 1939, because they have fought against the British mandate and the Israeli or the Jewish Yishuv, the Jewish pre-state, and they were defeated then. So they came to the hour of trial in 1948 already as a defeated nation. That is, the war of 1948 was won already in 1936, and they had no chance to win the war in 1948. They were already a defeated nation when they faced the Israeli superpower that was emerging in that year.
You have some very strong quotes in your book of your own and quoting others, like Bert Katznelson, who is the main ideologue of the labor movement, acknowledging that in the wake of the 1929 Arab riots, the Zionist enterprise is an enterprise of conquest. You also say the reality on the ground was that of an Arab community in a state of terror, facing a ruthless Israeli army whose path to victory was paved not only by its exploits against the regular Arab armies, but also by the intimidation and at times atrocities and massacres it perpetrated against the civilian Arab community. A panic-stricken Arab community was uprooted under the impact of massacres that would be carved into the Arabs' monument of grief and hatred. Explain that further.
Well, you see, there is a whole range of new historians that have gone into the sources of the origins of the State of Israel. Among them, you mentioned Avi Schleim, but there are many, many others that have exposed the evidence of what really went on the ground. And I must, from the very beginning, say that the main difference between what they say and my vision of things is not the facts. The facts, they are absolutely correct in mentioning the facts and putting the record straight. My view is that but for Jesus Christ, everybody was born in sin, including nations. And the moral perspective of it is there, but at the same time, it does not undermine, in my view, in my very modest view, the justification for the creation of a Jewish state. However, tough the conditions and however immoral the consequences were for the Palestinians.
I did want you to step back, Shlomo Ben Ami, and give us an overview of the whole peace process, of which you were a part, a critical player in this, the Oslo Peace Accords in 1993. Can you talk about what they entailed, why they failed?
Well, the Oslo peace process was an agreement. It started as an agreement between two unequal partners. Arafat conceived Oslo as a way, not necessarily to reach a settlement, but more importantly to him at that particular moment, in order to come back to the territories and control the politics of the Palestinian family. Don't forget that the Intifada, to which Oslo brought an end, started independently of the PLO leadership, and he saw how he was losing control of the destiny of the Palestinians. His only way to get back to the territories was through an agreement with Israel. So in Oslo, he made enormous concessions. In fact, when he was negotiating in Oslo with us, an official Palestinian delegation was negotiating with an official Israeli delegation in Washington. And the official Palestinian delegation was asking the right things from the viewpoint of the Palestinians: self-determination, right of return, end of occupation, all the necessary arguments. Whereas Arafat in Oslo reached an agreement that didn't even mention the right of self-determination for the Palestinians, doesn't even mention the need of the Israelis to put an end to settlements. If the Israelis, after Oslo, continued expansion of settlements, they were violating the spirit of Oslo, not the letter of Oslo. There's nothing in the Oslo agreement that says that Israelis cannot build settlements. So this was the cheap agreement that Arafat sold, precisely because he wanted to come back to the territories and control the politics of Palestine. Now, the thing is that a major problem with Oslo, on top of it, was that it solved very minor issues, such as Gaza, and even people on the far Israeli right were ready to give away Gaza, but it left open the future. The future was unknown. The two sides, the two parties, started to embark on a process when they had diametrically opposed views as to the final objective. There was nothing as to what will happen about Jerusalem. It was only said that we will negotiate Jerusalem. What about refugees? Nothing clear was said, just that we will negotiate the refugees. So the thing that the fact that the future was left so wide open was a standing invitation for the parties to dictate, to try and dictate the nature of the final agreement through unilateral acts. The Israelis by expanding settlements, and the Palestinians by responding with terrorism. So this symmetry that was created in Oslo persists to this very day. So Oslo could not usher in a final agreement because of the different expectations that the parties had. It was an exercise in make-believe. The Palestinians didn't even mention self-determination, so a leader like Rabin could have thought that, okay, we will have an agreement that will create something which is a state minus. This was Rabin's expression. He never thought this will end in a full-fledged Palestinian state. There was a lot of ambiguity, constructive ambiguity, might Kissinger say, but I think it was destructive ambiguity. It helped, this destructive ambiguity helped in clinching the Oslo agreement, but it was a minefield for those who went to Camp David and later on to Taba to try and solve all the pending issues.